Ethical Perspectives on the News is produced by the Interreligious Council of Linn County, which is solely responsible for its content. The views and opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily reflect those of the staff and management of KCRG TV9.
Good morning and welcome to Ethical Perspectives on the News. My name is Diehl. I'm currently the president of the Interreligious Council of Linn County. On this morning's show, we're going to be discussing the topic, why are Americans leaving organized religion? And here to talk about this topic, I do have two guests that I think will help us navigate this interesting subject. And before we go ahead and get started, I'd like each of you just to introduce yourself, tell our audience why this particular topic is important to you.
I'll go first. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me on, Alan. My name is Pastor Craig Brown. I serve First Lutheran Church in downtown Cedar Rapids. If I look familiar, it's because I was a former KCRG TV9 news reporter from 2000 to 2005. So every now and then someone around town says, you look familiar. Did you work at Rockwell? No, I was in your living room every night.
That's right.
But as I joke, I went from telling the news to the good news. So I'm happily serving First Lutheran for close to 15 years now. And we're obviously living in the trenches with these trends. And I'm excited to kind of share our personal insights, what we're seeing, and hear whatever else has to say as well.
Thank you, Craig.
Good morning. My name is Alison Bianchi. I am an associate professor in the Department of Sociology and Criminology at the University of Iowa. I'm also director for the Center for the Study of Group Processes. But I'm very much interested in the sociology of religion. I teach the course. In fact, I'll be teaching it next semester. And so keeping up with these trends and these understandings are very important to me. So I'm very interested in being on this panel and learning from you all.
Yes, thank you both. I'm really looking forward to talking about this. We actually did speak about this about a year and a half ago, and Pew Research actually just released some more statistics here just in the last few months that I thought were quite interesting, continuing to kind of track this trend, and which has been going on for a good 30 plus years in America, just seeing that overall trend away from what we're calling kind of organized religion. And I think, Alison, you'll talk a little bit more about that. But to get us into the discussion today, according to the Public Religion Research Institute, only 16% of Americans surveyed that religion is the most important thing in their lives. This was just last year. This marks a 4% drop in 1 decade. Melissa Deckman of the PPRI says Americans are increasingly likely to become religiously unaffiliated. So again, this seems to echo a lot of what we're hearing, which is, and seeing, right, is just the decline or the movement away from organized religion. So like one of you to just kind of jump in there and give your thoughts as to why religion, organized religion, is becoming less important in people's lives.
So I'll be the boring sociologist first, and then we'll hear some really important personal information from Craig. So institutions in the United States are declining in general. It's not just religion. It's involvement in so many things, civic organizations, for example. Americans are working longer hours. They have kind of de-urbanized somewhat, become suburbanized, become individualized when it comes to their entertainment, or, I mean, I'm not saying religion is entertainment, but something outside of work and family institutional involvement. And the mainstream religious organizations have taken some hits over the past 20 years. And then, of course, there's the internet, right? And social media and the phenomenon that takes us farther and farther away from face-to-face interactions. There's a lot more other factors that go into it, but I think those are the big ones. And I think that it's affecting religious affiliation, people who are actively participating in established religious organizations.
And I will follow that up. My fellow Hawkeye, I'm an Iowa graduate too, so it's always good to be on with you, Alison. I've been wrestling with this for all 15 years of my ministry and all 48 years of my life, as this trend has been most of my life long. And I'd say up to COVID, I was really doing a lot of hand-wringing and worrying about the church and the movement. But Something flipped the switch for me in COVID, and I've just kind of given over to God and let go of that worry and that concern. I'm not trying to say I'm burying my head in the sand and saying, oh, it's not that big a deal or it's not happening. It is, but I'm not sure people becoming less religiously affiliated is such a bad thing. If I were to respond to that survey, a lifelong Christian and still very active in my church, I'm not sure I would say organized religion is my number one concern. I would say probably my faith in God is number one. My family is number two. So I'm not sure I would put that, and I'm not sure we want people to put that. When we look at Jesus Christ, who we follow as Christians, he wasn't keen on organized religion. A lot of the Bible, he talks about, what they were doing in his church, he was not very happy with. So I believe maybe there's a reawakening that needs to happen in terms of Christianity. I can't speak for the other major faiths, but maybe we need to have a rethinking of it. The last point I'll make on this first question is we're seeing in the trenches, a lot of our people are not becoming members of our church. We're not seeing a decline in attendance. Our attendance is up since COVID when you count in our online ministry, and I can say more about that later. But our attendance is up, but our membership is down. So it probably follows the trend of what Alison's saying, mistrust in institutions, and organized religion is just another one of those. But also it's changing habits. People are more fluid. Churches are kind of changing the way we're tracking our people. No longer are churches putting an emphasis on membership and member numbers, but what is your attendance numbers? How are the lives, the impact you're reaching? So things are changing all across the board that way.
Yeah, and if you don't mind you jumping in, I think
go for it.
I totally agree with everything what Craig just said. I don't think that there's been necessarily a lowering of religious activity. I think there might be a lowering of religious affiliation. Even in Southern California, there's organizations of atheists that are getting together in order to create community. And I look at that and I say, how is that different from the way in which we kind of affiliate religious organizations? I think that there's a lot of religious activity. And if I could criticize in my usual sociological way, the way in which the surveys are capturing information, they're not asking the right questions, I think, sometimes. Craig just said, I don't think I would have answered it that way, that it's the most important thing. But my religious activity, my faith, my other ideas and our habits and the way in which we disseminate and receive information now, including religious information, is very different. And so, organizational affiliation may be going down, but I do think that Americans are still the most religious industrialized nation, and will probably continue to be so.
Yeah, it's interesting. As I was looking at some of the survey results, there are countries in which, when asked, is religion the most important thing in your life, it's like way up there, right? It's like part of their culture, part of their government. I mean, it's just, especially countries in the Middle East, et cetera. So I guess my question then is, I think what I heard both of you say is that religion, organized religion, religious affiliation is kind of moving away from being more structured, organized, walking through a church door, sitting in a pew, and now becoming a bit more individualized, internalized,
Absolutely.
kind of customized to the person. So what are in your mind? So I think that's definitely happening, right? Like people are definitely walking through a church door less than they used to. But to your point, Alison, I think Craig, that may not necessarily be a bad thing. It doesn't necessarily mean they're less religious. But what do you think are the implications, if any, of that kind of shift in how people express their religious faith?
So it has to do with identity, right? When you are affiliating with an organization, you kind of, internalize that part of your identity, right? And so if you don't have that kind of mechanism to attach you to an organization, your religious expression, your religious behavior becomes a little more fluid and maybe not served as much by the typical organization. And so I think that Craig's kind of onto it. Like, he's going to stop worrying so much about that perfect identity organization thing, and worry more about how people are religious, how they're expressing themselves, and how they're receiving their religious education and information.
Well, we have to change. We have to move with the trends. Christianity's always done that from the very beginning. Concrete was created about the time of the Apostle Paul, and that allowed him to travel great distances, and the gospel spread quickly. If it weren't for that technological revolution, none of us may even know who Jesus is. At the time of Martin Luther and the Reformation and the start of the Protestant movement in the 1500s, coincided with the exact same time that the printing press came out. And he was able to disseminate his thoughts and information throughout all of Europe. And now we've got, the internet and social media and this individualization. We have to change with it. Our church just started a Faith First podcast, which you can find wherever your podcasts are found. There's my little plug. But we started this a few weeks ago, and I'm a former broadcaster, so you'd think I'd be all gung-ho for it. And I said, I don't know. I listen to a lot of podcasts, but I usually do it for entertainment or information purposes. Is there really something we can use as a vehicle for faith? And we put a team together, and they said, absolutely, Pastor Craig, we have to try this. So we launched it thinking maybe 80, 90 people would listen to it. I've had close to 600 downloads in the first few weeks. So I think people are just transitioning different. We've got online members that I go make home visits and say, hey, are you interested in joining the church? Like, no, we worship every week online, but we're not really ready to join the religious institution. There you go again. I've got another family who, a family of 6, and they're all very, very active. The mom helps our Saturday evening meal program, serving the homeless to food. The dad helps me in men's ministry. The kids have both been confirmed. The little ones in Sunday school. And I finally got them to come to a new member class, and they just sat there and told me everything about our church. I'm like, what are we even doing here? Just sign the document. The people just don't want to join religious affiliations. But again, I'm not overly concerned about that. And plus, I think as people of faith, we just have to put our trust in God above, that it's God's churches. It's not our churches. It doesn't depend upon us. And the religious movements, all of them have gone through ebbs and flows for centuries. And how arrogant do we think we have to be to say we're the ones that has to put our flag in the ground and save Christianity or Islam or anything else? No, God is God, and God's got this. So that's another reason I'm just not terribly concerned.
I mean, as Americans, we are a creative bunch, and one thing we are really creative with is how it is that we express our religious behavior, our religious emotion, all the things religious. We are the nation that invented the tent revival. We are the nation that invented the megachurch. We are the online churches started primarily in North America. So it doesn't surprise me that with this new real big change and a technological bump that we've had with the internet, and then on top of that different platforms of social media, that it will only be a matter of time before religious organizations and religious individuals figure out how to use that tool as a way to, as Craig said, spread the good word.
Yeah. So I think so far we've been, kind of discussing this idea that people are their religion, if you will, is kind of manifesting itself in different ways. What I hear kind of is they're Christians, Muslims, etc., right? People of different, they identify with a particular faith. They may not be walking through a door, but they're expressing that in other ways, online or in different ways. But there definitely is a trend where, what they call religious switching, right? Where people were raised as Christian, and then as they got older, they left Christianity entirely, and not only do they not go to church, they just don't identify with the religion of their upbringing. And that continues, that's pretty predominant within the younger generation. So what are your thoughts concerning that? And maybe, Alison, we'll start with you, just kind of from a macro level, societal level.
Right.
I mean, do you agree that that's happening? This seems to be what the Pew Institute, other Gallup, et cetera, has seen over the last it's really probably the last 20 years where you've really started to see it. Your thoughts on the trend generally, why it's happened, what if it will continue to happen, and kind of implications?
Right. So there are a lot of sociologists that talk about religion as religious affiliations or religious switching as part of a religious market, right? In the United States, we have a separation of church and state. It's not always clear. We kind of renegotiate it every generation. But because of that separation, it has allowed religious organizations or different religious outlets to really attract different people. And so you gave the example of people leaving Christianity to go to another religion, but there's also switching into Christianity, right? It's across lines. And so again, it's a very Americans convert religious affiliation or religious expression more than any other in any other society. Maybe the Canadians and the Australians might be close to us, but we do a lot. And so I'm not sure. I think that this is a relatively new, since like the 70s and 80s kind of thing, and with the opening up of the internet, there's even more opportunity for the religious marketplace for people to kind of try new things. So
yeah. Craig, thoughts?
They'll write many books about 2020 in all sectors of our society, how it changed everything. I mean, no one's gone back to work. All the office buildings are empty downtown. We work from home. We were flexing work. We're doing all this stuff. Religion is no different. Some bloggers I followed call it the Great Resort. It was a chance for us all to kind of pause everything in our lives and say, what's really important? Do I really want to physically go to the dentist, or physically go to a church, or physically go to whatever, the library? No, I'm fine without these things. And of course, the organized religion, we didn't do ourselves any help by not meeting at all, I don't think, for a year and a half. Our kids, or our church families, the soccer practice didn't stop. They kept doing that. School kept meeting, but churches didn't. So I think that gave us a bit of a hit, but I think the silver lining in all of it, the positiveness, is we learned to do church in a new way. I've told our church members, in our leadership, we basically launched a new church in 2020. We did not do any sort of live streaming the day before COVID hit. The day it hit, we got online and did it. And we were blessed that we just went through a sanctuary renovation where we put in 3 remote controlled cameras and a switcher and all this good stuff that everyone at KCRG knows about. And I went out, hired the morning show director from Channel 2 and a couple other high-tech people. So we were ready to go on day one. But we have about anywhere from 150 to 300 people online, and that's more than we're seeing in our pews. We're seeing maybe, 200 to 250 in our pews. So our overall numbers are up, and as one meme said, just like that, overnight they were all televangelists. So I'm a little more blessed in my background having television. I'm teaching my other pastors, how to talk to a camera and use you in the singular and not you all, and don't look around, look right at the camera. And so there's tricks that we're learning to do that and ways to reach people. But there was kind of this resorting.
Yeah. So let me ask my question just a little bit differently. So I think, as kind of looking over the statistics here, and listening to, just different apologists, different people, church leaders, which I, kind of follow, obviously, being the president of the Religious Council and whatnot, there definitely seems to be more of like a, there's this bigger, broader societal concern, right? Europe went very secular. People are not identifying as Christian. That Americans are kind of following that trend. I think the Pew Research Institute actually said, depending on whether religious switching continues at recent rates, speeds up, or stops entirely, the projections show Christians of all ages shrinking from 64% to between a little more than half, or 54%, and just above 1/3 of all Americans by 2070. So, I mean, again, what they're the trend line seems to show that, people are going to identify less as Christian as the decades go by. So I guess, again, what is you, when you, do you agree with that? Do you see that? Do you have concerns around that? I'm the vice president of the Humanists of Linn County, consider myself, I was raised religious. I'm, quote unquote, non-religious as a humanist, but obviously I recognize the value that a person's religion does bring to their life. Many things, right? Both or the going into the church and just how it supports their kind of moral system, etc. But what are your thoughts generally, assuming, the United States becomes less Christian, if you will, right, as the predominant religion over the next few decades, as the Pew Research Center seems to forecast?
So, Alan, can I ask you a question? Are you concerned about younger generations, the millennials, the Gen Zers, the fact that if you really look at their age cohort, there is definitely a step down from all religions, not just Christianity. So
Right.
is the concern that as time goes on and populations age out, are the millennials, are the Gen Zers going to be involved?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just generally the concern that people have that as people become less associated with the religion of their youth or the predominant religion of their society, what they'll replace that with, where they'll find their sense of purpose, meaning, community, etc. Right? The things that I think you hear people talking about when they see people not going to church as much or identifying as Christians or Jews or Muslims, etc.
Craig, you want to go ahead? Yeah.
Uh,
What is it like on the ground, Craig, is what I want to ask you, because I can tell you what my students have been saying over the past 20 years, anecdotally, and I can talk about trends, but what's been happening in your church?
Yeah, there's definitely a shift or a change about what's important. I find myself preaching more on going kind of back to the basics of faith, not assuming that people know that are coming through the doors have an understanding of what it means to be Lutheran or even what it means to be Christian. So you kind of got to go back to the basics, but they're intrigued by it when they hear about, not trusting in yourself, but trusting in a higher power that's bigger than yourself. Following Jesus' lead to put others above yourself. That's not that you put yourself down, but that you bring others up to your level or higher. I think there's something very attractive to that ideology or that theology to people that they're kind of rediscovering. I don't think that's going to go away. And Alan, all due respect, it's a forecast, and who are the forecasters? The weather people and the stockbrokers, and we know both how they fare over time. And I work with a lot of great weather people. I work with Joe Rivers. I work with Denny Flair. I'm not trying to say that. His forecast is probably the best, by the way, statistically. But it's still, even he can't get 3 days out. And we're going to forecast 2070.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, they try to forecast these trends, right? But they acknowledge all throughout, right, that there's so many unpredictable events and things that could switch this. So it's all like, based on if the current trends continue, this is where it goes, right? But absolutely, it could switch tomorrow. Alison, I mean, you interact with younger people there at the university. Again, the statistics. Right. We all know what they say about that, seem to indicate that younger people are less religious overall, less religiously affiliated.
Right.
What conversations are you having?
Yeah. So when I teach my sociology of religion class, which always kind of fills up, like they're still very interested and like Craig said, intrigued by what it all means. I think that there's a cynicism that's kind of crept in with these young people, because of the politicization of just about everything, and the politicization even of religion itself. I think that I like this. I like the way that Craig is talking about this. Like some people just haven't gotten back to the basics. What they hear is what's broadcast on the media: politics, religion, politics. These kind of button pushing. issues that always kind of get kind of jumbled together. The millennials and the Gen Zers just don't want to go to a religious organization and to listen to a political statement. A lot of my students have said that. There is some studies that indicate that that's part of the cynicism. And so I really like this idea that Craig is talking about of just getting back to the basics and not, you know, and not kind of having this kind of strange, like this, everything has become so politicized in our country. And I think that it's absolutely seeped into our religious understanding, and they're turned off by it.
When religion is, or Sunday morning is the most segregated hour, you know, it's been that way.
And then there's that, right? And that's one of the things, right? Yeah, that we always talk about in social religion. Sunday is the most segregated day, right? And there's not been a kind of this kind of multicultural, multi-generational kind of thing going on. And that's really unfortunate. But I think that religious individuals like Craig and organizations are working on that. And that would be, if I had to kind of tackle that, I would take the route that Craig is taking. Like, let's take all this other stuff out and let's just go back to the basics of the religion. And this is how you can, think about meaning and purpose in one's life.
The other thing we try to do as church leaders is model in our behavior and our messages what we want. And there is such division, but yet the church is still one of the places where all the segments of society can come together. On a Sunday morning in our church, we have some of the most staunch Republicans and the strongest progressives. And you come to the communion rail and there's the richest people in Cedar Rapids and some of the poorest, and they're all shoulder to shoulder. And they're all leveled at the communion rail or before the altar of God. We're all kind of on that same level. And I just preached a sermon on unity, and I swore on allegiance, I'm not going to talk badly about other Christians and other Christian leaders. We're in this together. And I think the evil one's plan is to conquer and divide us. And he's done a pretty darn good job the last 3 years. So we know we need each other. I've had lots of conversations with other Christian leaders and other faith leaders that we're all kind of in the same boat. We're in survival mode, and we need each other to survive. And hopefully our people see that and they follow suit, because we can be one of the beacons of unity and light and positivity in this world. There is still very much a reason to be a person of faith. Yeah,
excellent. And Craig, I'm going to come back to you. We have just a little over a minute left, and I really. What are you've already touched on some of the things, but let's say you're having a conversation with a young person, 19, 20 years old. They may have left their religion, were not raised religious. What would be your kind of elevator speech, if you will, as to why they should give your church or Christianity, or let's, say any organized religion, kind of give it a second look?
Yeah, it's every funeral I do. There's just tons of people that have no basis of faith, and I'm here to listen. And what are your concerns? What's going on in your life that you need help with? And then I think our Creator speaks to that. One, a Creator exists, and I've had my struggles the last 3 years even believing that. But I believe that to be true, that we are created. Something or someone created us, and that Creator loves you very much. And would die for you, would do anything for you. And I think that resonates with people, young people of all ages. They want to hear that. They want to feel a sense of belonging, a sense of love, a sense of community, a sense of unity. The church isn't a perfect place, but it's probably a decent place to start.
Beautifully said, Craig. Alison, thank you so much. You both have been terrific. This is a pretty heavy topic. I can hear the passion, though, in both your voices. Yeah. I want to say thank you again to our viewers this morning, and hope you have a wonderful Sunday. Take care now. Bye-bye.